And he spent 2 weeks with Cephas. Now who is Cephas? Or Cephas? The same as the rock, Petros. Remember those days they spoke Aramaic and they wrote Greek. So just for the sake of not becoming too familiar just with the sound of the name. You know, Peter, Pete. Paul emphasizes the revelation, the rock. Cephas is the Aramaic for rock. Petros is the Greek for rock. So for 2 weeks, Paul spent 2 weeks in Jerusalem with Cephas. And who else? James, the Lord's brother. Because in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul makes a beautiful statement. He says Jesus appeared after his resurrection to many individuals, also to a group of 500. And then he also appeared to James. What happened to James when Jesus appeared to him after the resurrection? He was introduced to his true identity. He says, I did not begin in Mary's womb. He writes in James 1 verse 17, he says, every good and perfect gift. Do you hear the gift language? Not reward. Gift. Not reward for good behavior. Gift. Every good and perfect. With good there's no hidden agenda. I mean, good news is only good news when it's good news. Perfect is only perfect when you cannot improve, when you cannot add to it. Perfect gift comes from above, and he uses the Greek word anuthen, which is the same word John uses in John 3 verse 3, that we've translated born again, but it's born from above. Because no man ascends, John 3:13 says, no man ascends who did not also descend from above, even the Son of Man. We come from above. Every good and perfect gift comes from above. Amen. From the Father of lights, with whom there is no variableness, no shadow due to change. God is not a schizophrenic. Jesus says, anything you knew about God that is unlike me is not God. He says, no one knows the Father except the Son. He says, I've come to introduce you to your Father.
Hallelujah.
To your Father. I didn't come to confirm your theology. I came to reveal the Father. So that you've seen Him. You've seen me. You've seen me. You've seen Him. And in Him you discover who you are, Son of the Most High. Son of God. There is only one Father. The devil can never qualify to compete with your true Father. The devil is the father of lies. He has no authentic parent to claim over your life. James says every good and perfect gift comes from above, from the Father of lights. You see, the people who dwelt in darkness have seen a great light. The gates of Hades can no longer confuse me, because this great light dawns in my own understanding that I'm born from above. I come from Him. He's my true Abba. His spirit and my spirit agrees and cries, Abba Father, Abba Father. And then James says in verse 18, you know, in James chapter 1 verse 18, he says, God brought us forth, and he uses the Greek word egeneto, God birthed us through the word of truth. The truth about your genesis, about your origin, is revealed in the incarnation. The word that became flesh. And then John says it so beautifully. James, he says, if any man hears this word, you know what it's like? It's like seeing the face of your birth in a mirror. In a mirror. You see, you can't get more personal than looking in the mirror. And that's me. That's me. God has your blueprint, your original design preserved in His original thought. Like a photographer would capture a moment, and that moment would be documented beyond virus. You can display that moment in many prints. The prints can be destroyed, but the original moment is in place. And so when John introduces us to Him, he goes beyond lineage and genealogies and who was whose grandfather. He says, in the beginning was the logic of God, and the Word became flesh. So James says, when any man hears this word, it is like seeing the face of your birth, as in a mirror. You're introduced to yourself again. He says, but then, I just want to read you from, we have a translation that we call the mirror translation of some of the books, and it's available on our website. I just want to read you from the mirror translation, if I can get there. You know what? You can just go and get it. You can just go and get it. The angle is not quite here that I can read it clearly for you. But you still try. I'm going to get it now. James 1. And give me a verse option. I'm going to read you from verse 23. The difference between a mere spectator and a participator is that both of them hear the same voice and perceive in its message the face of their own Genesis reflected as in a mirror. They realize that they are looking at themselves, but for the one it seems just too good to be true. He departs. You see, James speaks about being a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Now, you know what we do with a legalistic mind? Immediately we think, oh, there's James. No, he wants you to do the law of Moses. No, that's not the word he's speaking about. He's speaking about the word that was made flesh, as in a mirror. The word of truth that gave birth to us. This is the word. Now, if I want to understand what does it mean to do the word, then he gives us a very clear clue on what it means not to do the word. Two things. He hears the word. He sees the face of his birth as in a mirror, but he does what? He goes away. Where does he go to? Back to his old mind. Back to the law. Briefly, he looks away from the law unto Jesus, the author and finisher of faith.
Right. Yeah.
But then he finds all kinds of contradictions, and these contradictions will give him a valid reason to think, well, it's great, but it's too good to be true. It's not for now.
Yeah.
And I buy back the old lie of separation and delay. He goes away. And immediately he forgets what manner of person he is. Because what manner of person he is was revealed again in the person of Christ. The ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord. A lady in Santa Cruz, when we were there last week, she told us a beautiful dream that she heard. She told Lydia, she said in this dream she was given a check, and it was an unlimited amount, but the check was made out to remember. The ends of the earth shall remember. Now you can only remember something that you've already known, but you've forgotten. We have forgotten what? The rock that gave birth to us. The rock that gave birth to us. You see, stormproof living has to do with finding a foundation in the rock. What is the reference in the rock? My true identity. My original identity. The ecclesia of God. The voice of the free eagle that resonates within me and that awakens God's language, God's incarnation in me, so that my life becomes His language.
Yes.
I've heard the voice of truth. So James continues, he says, the difference between a mere spectator and a participator is that both of them hear the same voice and perceive in its message the face of their own Genesis reflected as in a mirror. They realize that they are looking at themselves. You see, the very first moment that registers in the hearing of the gospel is you see yourself. You see yourself.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing yourself as you would look under the law.
Right.
Because the law would show you how imperfect you are.
Right.
Yeah.
But the gospel shows you how perfect you are. By design and by His redemption.
Amen.
They realize that they're looking at themselves. This is now very personal. This is not me. This is not just my wife or this person I want, God to zap or do something. I'm discovering myself. As in a mirror.
Yes.
He says the one thinks it's just too good to be true. He departs back to his old way of seeing himself, never giving another thought to the man he saw there in the mirror. The other one is mesmerized by what he sees. He is captivated by the effect of a law that frees man from the obligation to the old written code and restricted him to his own efforts and willpower. James calls it the law of perfect liberty. You know what the word liberty is in Greek? It's the word eleutherios, and it means without obligation. Can you imagine? No obligation.
Amen.
That sounds like the law of love. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. I hitchhiked for many years, many miles to go and visit Lydia when we were still dating. Not under obligation. There was no obligation. You see, the one hears the same word and sees in it the same face, the face of his birth. But he has so many valid excuses to feel distracted. And immediately he goes back to his old ugly duckling mindset and forgets what manner of swan he is.
Wow.
But the other one, this is the one we want to study. The other one is mesmerized by what he sees. He is captivated by the effect of a law that frees man from the obligation to the old written code that restricted him to his own efforts and willpower. You see, this law, the law of faith, goes beyond quality decisions. Paul says in Romans 3:27, what becomes of our boasting? He says it's excluded. By which law? The law of works? Certainly not. By the law of faith.
Yeah.
The engine of the law of works is called willpower. The engine of the law of faith is the agape of God, the love of God.